Well, as we've been saying, Antony Blinken is in Israel right now for more talks after he's been discussing the Gaza war with regional leaders in the Middle East. Alan Fisher has more on that now for us from West Jerusalem.
For the moment, it's an escape route with no escape. From first light, they gathered at the Rafah crossing, the only way out of Gaza. The way remains blocked. No agreement to open the route, no ceasefire in the area despite pressure from the Americans. And with no way out, there's no way in for food, water and other humanitarian supplies.
On our way to the crossing, they shelled Rafah Street and we started screaming. We came to the crossing and thought it was safe. Nowhere is safe in Gaza. Wherever we go, there's shelling, crying, screaming, blood. Seriously, we don't know what we should do. We're coming to the crossing knowing that they won't open it.
In Gaza, the scars of war are obvious, open and raw. Another night of heavy bombardment has increased the number of dead there. Officials estimate 1,000 more may be trapped under the rubble, many already dead, some unable to be saved, who will be dead soon. In the north of Israel, there's an evacuation underway there too. After days of tit-for-tat exchanges between Hezbollah and the Israeli army, the country's war cabinet approving the movement of everyone in 28 communities within 2 kilometres of the border with Lebanon. The exchanges have been limited in scope, but still lethal. Israel says Iran is pushing the confrontations, a charge denied in Tehran. And the Israeli army warned Hezbollah about exploiting the situation.
Hezbollah has executed a number of attacks in order to divert our operational efforts from the south under Iranian instruction and support.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back in Israel after touring several Arab capitals, taking the temperature there. But there's little to show for his diplomacy efforts. No humanitarian corridor, no ceasefire, and no sign of an immediate end to the fighting. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
Well, let's bring in Marwan Bishara. He's Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. He joins us now via Skype from London. Marwan, let me start by asking you for your assessment of the success of Blinken's trip. It does feel like there's been a shift, if only a marginal one, in US rhetoric as well as US media coverage?
Well, of course, the first question is, in that sense, success for whom? If it's success for American diplomacy, I think on the face of it, it wasn't easy. His mission was quite difficult because according to the sort of American guidelines, his president's guidelines, he was supposed to do a number of things that are almost impossible. One, he's supposed to support unconditionally Israel's basically genocidal war against Gaza. Two, he was supposed to block anyone in the region from even daring to interfere or provoke Israel as it's waging its war. Three, he's going to shield Israel basically from all criticism and bring about condemnation by Israel's partners and not so much partners in the Middle East. 4 or 5, he wants to make sure that Arabs are going to help him with Hamas to release as many captives as possible without offering anything in return. That's also not easy. And then he wanted also the Arabs' help in order to create so-called humanitarian corridor, which is sort of an Orwellian way of saying ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. That certainly didn't work well for him. So it was really a difficult mission within the guidelines of the president or the White House's policy. But he tried as much as possible to get some sort of an agreement, for the Arabs to tone down their criticism, to talk about the humanitarian crisis without necessarily going all the way in, condemning Israel. Their foreign minister's statement was basically watered down to sort of condemning the attacks of both sides, which is new. But otherwise, no, it wasn't that much of a, great success.
Marwan, we've heard lots of speculation now about Biden potentially following. Do you expect that to happen? And could that potentially delay an Israeli ground invasion?
I don't know. I have this feeling, right, that since we've heard about the imminent land invasion, it didn't exactly happen. And this whole 24-hour notice to the Palestinians, or 1 million of them, to sort of move south, and you'd expect something to happen afterwards. So analytically speaking, I am not sure if which is the two scenarios it is. Scenario number one is that the Israelis weren't ready, and all their rhetoric was just, hot talk about imminent invasion. They were still preparing themselves because what's coming is going to be incredibly difficult, militarily speaking. This urban warfare, amongst a population of 2 million people. So they're still preparing. They're still kind of going through all the possible scenarios and so on. The second possibility is that things are really getting complicated. They just didn't realize how complicated it is, or perhaps after some intelligence that Hamas is pretty much prepared, and that probably Iran and Hezbollah might actually be serious. If there's a land invasion and there's a tragedy in Gaza, that maybe it's going to get really worse. And Biden is kind of sending mixed signal about occupation or not occupying, moving in, but not all the way. So I think there is possibility of that or the other. I am more in tune with the possibility that they are still working on their military scenarios. And in the meantime, it's possible that Biden might show up in order to, once again, express his support for Israel's right to defend itself, probably without mentioning much about the Palestinians' right to protect themselves.
Marwan, given all the shifting dynamics and some of the shifting rhetoric here, what's your sense then of the information sharing that's actually going on between Israel and the White House at the moment? Does Washington actually have oversight of what's being planned?
I tell you, just judging from Biden's pre-recorded interview that was aired on Sunday, but was in fact done on Thursday, is that the White House does not have a clue what Israel is up to or what is the end game for its war in Gaza. And that's why he seems to advise, even warn publicly on the most watched program on American television, 60 Minutes, that the occupation or reoccupation of Gaza would be, in his words, a big mistake. Well, in other words, he doesn't know exactly what Israelis are up to, and he's just preempting the possibility that they might actually be contemplating the fantasy that they could just reoccupy Gaza, forever, that this would be a big mistake. So my sense is America is giving an unconditional support to Israel, but on the other hand, it is not getting sort of a seat on the table, if you will, in Israel's war cabinet to actually, advise and guide, being, the superpower with already having, two regional wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and having so much at stake, having sent 2 naval strike forces to the East Mediterranean. But it seems it doesn't have that much.
Marwan Bishara there, Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. Always great to talk to you, Marwan. Thanks for joining us.